There is a podcast that lies between the imagination of two simple-minded earthlings. Travel with these two longtime friends, Jimbo and 80s E, as they attempt to explore the fifth dimension. Follow along with them as they take the key and unlock the door to the vast space between shadow and substance. This podcast is one of trivia, of insight, and of sounds and ideas from one of the greatest television shows ever produced. You are embarking on a timeless journey. There is your signpost up ahead. You are entering the tragedy of cinema's Twilight Zone.
A brief, if frenetic, introduction to Mr. Archibald Beechcroft, a child of the 20th century, a product of the population explosion, and one of the inheritors of the legacy of progress. Mr. Beechcroft again. This time, Act 2 of his daily battle for survival. And in just a moment, our hero will begin his personal one-man rebellion against the mechanics of his age. And to do so, he will enlist certain aids available only in the Twilight Zone.
All right, guys, welcome back to the Tragedy of Cinema, the Twilight Zone series. I am your host, Jimbo, and joined once again by
80s E. Good to see everybody back in the fifth dimension, remote fifth dimension. Once again, it's been a while since we've done a remote recording, so hopefully we haven't forgotten everything.
Right. Before we get started, Eric, let's go ahead and take a moment, since this is our first time recording since our live show, just to thank everybody that came out. A special thanks to Jackie and the crew from the Boone County Jail and Distillery for hosting the event. They did a fantastic job. We want to thank everybody that came out and supported us. The place was packed. It was great.
Yeah, I think we had close to 30 people. I thought that was a wonderful turnout, and I couldn't believe, I found out after the fact that there were at least one coworker of yours that traveled a pretty long distance. I was shocked that they drove all the way. Was it from Kentucky? Is that right?
Yeah, I worked with them down in Kentucky, Jen and Kenny. So
okay, Jen and Kenny, yeah.
Not only that, but there was a couple there that his mom used to be the cook and worked there at the jail.
Oh, really?
30 years prior or something like that. I thought that was really cool, too. I forgot their names, but they were talking to me on the way out, so it was pretty cool to meet them, too. But we just wanted to say thanks once again for everybody that came out, and Jackie and them for doing such a fantastic job, and we can't wait to do some more collaborations with you guys in the future.
Yeah, we were really excited. It was pretty nerve-wracking there for a while. We were trying to, Jimbo and I were up late nights trying to figure out how we were going to get the equipment to all work together. And, for a first trial run, I thought we did pretty well. And it turned out really, really nicely, and got to meet some people. I met a lady. Well, I won't go into. She had a lot of stories about the jail too. I met her out while we were handing out candy. Well, that event on Meridian too, I couldn't believe the number of people. But stay tuned. We're going to have an episode, I believe, that we're going to talk specifically and kind of review the live show. We got some interviews that I want to throw in. I'm still going to gather a couple more interviews, I think. And we got some good stuff cooked up for you, but I don't want to give all the way, Jimbo.
Eric, how many people do you think that we handed out candy to? How many people do you think was on Meridian? It was extremely packed. I have never seen that many people in a long time. I kind of felt like Mr. Beechcroft because there was just so many people from this episode. Yeah. There was just so many people and so many awesome outfits and people and pictures being taken and kids and parents. Just everybody was having a good time, man. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, I had no idea that it was that big of an event, but it worked out perfectly. Hopefully we can snag a few more viewers maybe next time, but it was great to be a part of it, and it was a fun night for sure, one that will be memorable, and it's a good time.
Well, Eric, since it's been a while since we were trudging right along on the Twilight Zone, and we kind of hit a roadblock with a lot of stuff. So, but we're back at it. This is season 2, episode 27, "The Mind and the Matter." So coming down to the final few episodes of season 2, and then we will have the awesome ending tragedies awards ceremony at the end of season 2, which is always fun to look back on.
I can hardly wait.
I know you can hardly wait because it's so fun. I went back and listened to our season 1 tragedies. It was really good, but this one's going to be a lot of fun because you like a lot that I didn't like, and you didn't like a lot that I did like. So I think it's going to be a fun time when we get to that. But let's go ahead and take away this one, the mind and the matter.
Alrighty, The Mind and the Matter. This is the Twilight Zone Season 2, episode number 27. It was directed by Buzz Kulick and written by Rod Serling. It was an adaptation from I think it was a 1955 radio broadcast story, but I'll get to that in a minute in my notes. The original air date for this particular episode was May the 12th, 1961. And the production costs, this was a regular Twilight Zone, production costs come in right around where they normally do. If you've been following the podcast at all, we're at $56,970.64. And when we adjust that for inflation, again, that's about a 926% increase, just to kind of give you a feeling of what it would look like in today's dollars. It would look like $584,998.92. So almost $600,000. Just a few dates of importance for this episode. The dates of rehearsal were March the 27th and the 28th of 1961. And the actual dates of filming, we got 3 dates for filming for this episode. We're looking at March the 29th, the 30th, and the 31st of 1961. And when we talk about May 12th, 1961, this brings us to our favorite segment of the podcast for May the 12th, the segment we like to call On This Day in History. All right, for May the 12th in TV and film history. And by the way, I'm almost running out of, I was thinking the other day, what am I going to do when we go on to the season 3, 4, and 5? Because all the trivia, if the same dates come up, like I'm going to run out, I'm going to have to come up with some new stuff, but I'll have to figure something out. But for this day, in May 12th, in 1960, Elvis Presley appears on the Frank Sinatra television special. Elvis sings Sinatra's 1957 Cy Coleman hit Witchcraft, and Frank performs Presley's 1956 classic Love Me Tender. So they swapped songs, I guess, on that particular episode. I didn't even know Frank Sinatra had a television show, but that doesn't mean anything. I don't know a lot of things. So 1963, on May the 12th, Bob Dylan walks out of the Ed Sullivan Show. Now, I have heard of the Ed Sullivan Show. Apparently, he walked out, this is Bob Dylan, he walked out over a dispute about a song choice. And I don't know, but I've heard stories that Ed Sullivan ran a pretty tight ship, so maybe it was a dispute with, Ed himself and over a song that Dylan wanted to sing. I don't know the particulars, but apparently he walked out. That was a pretty significant thing in TV and film history. Let's skip ahead a few years to 1968. These are all like in 1968, but WSKG TV channel, this is the PBS channel in Binghamton, Binghamton, New York, begins broadcasting. So that's the hometown. That's why that's significant. That's the hometown of Rod Serling. 1968, their PBS channel launched on May the 12th. And finally, probably something we're more familiar with, in 1994, on May the 12th, Pulp Fiction, directed by Quentin Tarantino and starring John Travolta and Uma Thurman and Samuel L. Jackson, premieres at the Cannes Film Festival in 1994. So that was kind of John Travolta's reemergence, right? Would you say? Like, that was his comeback film after he was experienced a lot of popularity in the 70s. He had a kind of a comeback in about 20 years later in the highly acclaimed film Pulp Fiction. So with that will end On This Day in TV and film history. Jimbo, I throw it back to you, sir.
All right. So let's go ahead and talk about the cast of this episode. Honestly, it's really not a lot of cast. There's a lot of extra people in the background, if you will. But there's usually pretty much only about, I'd say, 3 main people in this episode. So we'll start with the main guy, Archibald Beechcroft. He played by Shelley Berman. You may remember him as in some movies, Meet the Fockers, where he played Judge Ira. And he was also in You Don't Mess with the Zohan, where he played Zohan's father. He's been in... Yeah.
He's been in movies that recent. Okay.
Yeah, well, I mean, he's dead now, but I'm just saying.
Right.
I didn't write that down, but yeah. Then you had Jack Greenidge. He played Henry. Eric, you might remember him from the great James Dean movie Rebel Without a Cause, where he played Moose in 1955. Okay. Then you had Chet Stratton, who played Rogers. He was in a little thing, the Matinee Theater in 1955. And then there's a bunch of uncredited, so we'll just name them off in the movie that they have listed here that they worked in or whatever. So it's David Armstrong. He was a worker that was uncredited. He was in the General Electric Theater from 1953. Ken Kane was another worker. He was in Here Comes the Brides in 1968. Robert McCord, he's the elevator operator. He was uncredited, but he's been in several Twilight Zone episodes. You had Dan White, who was a worker that was uncredited. He was in the Americano in 1955. And you had, yes, Pinocchio Roy Wilson. That is his name, Pinocchio Roy Wilson.
What?
Yeah. And he was the photo double. Eric, he was in the movie, the great Mel Brooks movie Blazing Saddles in 1974, where he was a dancer. And he was also in Pete's Dragon as a dancer. So I think that was pretty cool that he must have been like a famous dancer or one of those dancers. And then you had the great legendary Rod Serling once again being himself as the narrator and the self-host. And obviously he's famously remembered for all the episodes of The Twilight Zone. So there you have the short cast of this episode.
Yeah, very short cast. That'll become more evident maybe when we start to unpack the episode. And let me give you a plot summary here for this episode. The intolerant Archibald Beechcroft is a misanthropic clerk of a central insurance company, and he hates everybody. When a colleague gives him a book about the power of the mind, Archibald reads the magic book and decides to wipe out the human race. Boy, that was a gigantic leap for me, too. Like, I know he hates everybody, but, I mean, he goes from, well, getting rid of the landlady to start with, and then he goes from that to, hey, I'll just wipe out the entire planet.
I always thought that was a... He said, today the landlady, tomorrow the world, and I'm like, wow.
Yeah.
But, I kind of, I kind of picture him kind of like you, where you hate crowds and you hate people, you know what I mean, and coworkers, whatever. But I kind of think he reminds me a lot of the Grinch. This Christmas time around,
Yeah, I can see that connection. Yeah. So he makes that quantum leap from the landlady. I always thought that was interesting, from the landlady to the entire world. But let me finish this. There's one sentence left here. It says, however, he feels lonely and uses his ability to make the entire population of the city his perfect clone. That was a sort of interesting turn of events in the episode, discovering how hateful the world would be. So I thought we'll get to it at the end when we give our questions and observations segment, but I did think there was one shining little moment in the episode that it taught an important moral, but beyond that, I didn't think the episode was that great. But let's go ahead and launch in.
I'm gonna throw you this question right now, because I'm sure we'll answer it at the end. But are you ready?
Okay.
How come when he was like, I'm just lonely and all that, how come, since he can make things appear and disappear at the blink of an eye, how come he couldn't have just concentrated and thought of his perfect soulmate to arrive and not bring everybody else back? Just, like a wife, a partner.
Yeah, that's an interesting way. It could have an interesting direction that the episode could have taken if they would have written it that way. That's kind of interesting to think about.
Because at the end he's like, way. I don't, when he sees himself and it's like, it's just all him. But if he would have just brought in a lover, whatever.
Right.
Then he could have made her disappear if he didn't like her. I'm just saying.
His better half. Yeah.
Right. I just thought I was like, man, you don't have to bring back the entire world,
Yeah.
couple people.
So let's go ahead and launch into this bad boy. So the opening scenes, we're introduced to this main character. He's crammed into, I think, like a subway car. I'm going to start the episode here. We're going to walk through like we normally do and try to hit some high points. It's like the hustle and bustle of an office building, and people are, once they get out of the subway, I think they get jammed into an elevator next. You see, I'm going to assume this is in like a major metropolitan city and like New York or something, and he's got this he's an insurance, what is he, like an adjuster maybe? I don't know exactly what his title is.
I kind of think he works like in the stock market, because if you notice that picture behind him has the Dow or whatever going up.
Okay.
You know what I mean? But I don't know for sure.
So shortly after the hustle and bustle scene of the opening scenes, Rod gives his introduction very early. He sets the stage for us and introduces us to Beechcroft. And then the next scene that we come to is the office floor, and we're introduced to the character Henry, who immediately spills coffee, and he will do that throughout the episode. He spills coffee all over Beechcroft's suit, and, you know, he's just a cantankerous office employee who he seems like, if I'm going to read into his character, he has a certain way of doing things, and if anything disrupts, not unlike most people, you know, they have their routines or whatever, and when it gets disrupted, he gets overly agitated, and he's easily agitated. And he responds to what's the character's name? Henry. He responds, he says, "You clumsy clod," after he spills the coffee. And then, Beechcroft sits down at his desk in disgust. And then the next scene is like in the men's room. All right. And he's going to kind of clean up, and there's a bench in the men's room. But this is one piece of trivia that's important. This is the same restroom that they used in a season 1 episode, Mirror Image. This set is the same bathroom set from Mirror Image, if you remember that episode from season 1.
Eric, did you happen to notice in the background the old paper towel dispensers? That's just the single sheet that you put out. And how unsanitary is that thing, dude?
They're pretty bad.
Have you ever used one of those?
In a dirty truck stop, yeah. If I was like on a long trip and you had to stop in a small town in a crummy gas station, those were still around. Even as recent as a couple years ago, I think I might have used one. But in this restroom, we have another meeting of another person, another cast member, and this is Rogers. Now, I got a question for you. Do you think Rogers, I don't think it actually says, do you think Rogers is like his superior, like the boss, or do you think he's just like another coworker? Because he's got a lot of advice for Archibald.
I'm not really sure, but I really like that guy. If you pay attention, especially the way they did this set in the mirrors, you can see his facial expression, both of them, when they're talking back and forth and they turn around. I thought he did a really good job, but he's kind of a weird guy.
He's very health conscious, and he's got lots of advice. Rogers does. He asks Archibald, is he feeling ill? I would characterize Rogers as like a company man through and through. Everybody probably works with somebody that they, like for me, they bleed brown. Like it's all about the company. It's all, they're always, I don't know, they're kind of annoying after a while. Like their whole life sort of revolves around the company. But I'm going to give you a few quotes from Rogers. He says, why I think that he's, sort of a brown-nosing company man. He says this. He says, keeping yourself fit is not only a personal obligation. Oh, no. It's, in a larger sense, it's part of your responsibility to your job and to the firm that employs you. But the power's in the greens, Beechcroft. The power's definitely in the greens. So he's trying to give him all this dietary, advice and telling Beechcroft, like, your diet, the reason why you feel so down and slow and sluggish is, you're not eating right. And then, after Rogers gives Beechcroft some upbeat dietary health advice, Archibald has a rather stern retort. He says, if you'd really like to know, Mr. Rogers, if you'd really like to know precisely why I'm so dead tired, you ought to try coming to work on the subway at 7:30 every morning, then jamming into an elevator like part of a herd of cattle, then working in that cacophonous den that you call an office, always get jostled, always get shoved, and always get pushed around. So he comes back with a quick one, like Beechcroft, he's just fed up with the hustle and bustle and always having to contend with people and trying to work. He's just exhausted. People are exhausting him, and he's, it's not his diet. I just thought that was funny, and, Rogers is this upbeat company guy who's, Mr. Positivity, and Beechcroft is like, dude, like, leave me alone. I've had enough of, everybody. So, Beechcroft then explains his philosophy on the universe, and the way he can reach absolute perfection is absolute solitude, fixing the problem by eliminating all of the people. So it's very clear that Beechcroft has a problem with people. We all experience that at certain times, I think, in different ways. Some people are not as much, they're not as inclined to be put off by people, and others maybe a little bit more. But, Beechcroft is embodying this person, like, everything's sort of coming to a head for him in his life and in his career. So, next scene, we're in the cafeteria, right? And Henry saves Beechcroft a seat at the table. And then here's the centerpiece. Henry, I'm speaking here, he hands Beechcroft a book on how to achieve the ultimate power of concentration. So Henry recounts a compelling story of his friend who caused a woman to buy a chartreuse and orange scarf by using his mind by concentrating really hard. So he rolls out this story to Beechcroft. I don't know, I kind of have a warm spot for Henry, because he's like this young guy, he's trying to learn the business, and maybe Beechcroft is like his mentor, and he's trying to impress him, and he wants to do a good job, but he's just a fumbling, bumbling, clumsy guy.
Well, two things in this scene that struck me. One is the lunch they're eating looks like a glorified TV dinner with a foil over it.
I noticed that too.
And I was like, right. I can't remember the last time I had TV dinner, but now I want
me back.
one. But now I want one. And I want a TV tray to set it on and watch cartoons on Saturday.
You want those nasty peas and carrots?
Yeah. But not only that, but did you see where he put the napkin? Beechcroft takes the napkin, and on his suit coat, he puts it down here. He hangs it from like where his suit coat's buttoned up, like down by his belly. Instead of up around his neck, he puts it down there in his belly. And that just bugged me because I don't ever remember, going out to eat after church and stucking the napkin right down there on my suit coat. It's always up here or something, by your tie or something. That just bugged me. I don't know if you caught that, but that was just really infuriating to me.
I did catch the TV dinner. I used to hate those things as a kid, but yeah, I'm kind of intrigued now. I might want to try one again just to see if they're as bad as I remember. I don't know. Sometimes your tastes change as you get older. So again, Henry recounts this story, and that's kind of the centerpiece, and that intrigues Beechcroft. And he thanks Henry for the book, but not before having spilled coffee on him yet again. So Henry spills the coffee again at lunch. So the next scene we come to, he's on the subway going home. Beechcroft he's packed in shoulder to shoulder, but he is ferociously reading this book. There are cutaway scenes where it's a page turner for him. I mean, he reads it in about, in a night. He's done by the end of dinner time, which that takes us to the next scene. He's in his apartment, and the montage continues all the way up to the dinner table, and he's eating dinner and he's reading the book and everything. And then he comes to a conclusion at the end of reading the book. He says to himself, they're right. They're absolutely unequivocally right. Concentration is the most underrated, unknown power in the universe. Why a person could move mountains. There's really no limit to what a man could do using the power properly. No limit at all. And so that's his conclusion after reading the book. If he could just concentrate hard enough, he could get rid of people. And he gets his first chance to try that when the landlady comes to knocking, and she's there to collect the rent. and you just see a cutaway scene of her, hand banging against the front of the door, and that goes on for a second. Then her hand just disappears. Right, that's Beechcroft wishing her away, and it worked. So he has this newly discovered power of concentration. And then, Jimbo, you've already quoted the line. He says, "Today the landlady, tomorrow the world."
Yeah, but
it's really corny how they close that scene.
Yeah, but before that, when he's concentrating, he's like, "Go away," and he's like, "Be extinct." I was like, "Wow, he's going all out."
Yeah. So then we cut away to commercial break after that corny line to end the scene, and then the next scene we come to is in the subway station. It's a trip back to work in the morning. Beechcroft stands at like the landing on top of the stairs, and he concentrates, and all the people disappear. I just kind of went through a litany of the things that he was able to do, which I just thought he was able to. Apparently, he was able to do a lot more by concentration than just making people disappear, because the train is still operating, right? He automatically unlocks the turnstile. He causes the subway to move. The elevator and the office doors automatically open by him just like flicking his hand.
He makes makes time stop because it was making noise on the clock.
Stops. He causes an earthquake, an electrical storm. So apparently his powers of concentration aren't just limited to causing people's extinction. Here's my question, though. I think I brought this up later, so I'll just do it. Why would you go to work?
That's exactly what I was getting ready to say. Number one, even if you went to work, why would you? He puts paper in and starts typing, and I'm like,
yeah, he's doing.
I ain't doing that. Who am I going to turn it into? Who's going to fill out my paycheck? I go down to the local bank and grab me a couple bags of cash, but you don't need cash because you can just take whatever you want. It's just ridiculous.
Yeah, that is a kind of a big plot hole. Like, I know they have to do it to sort of move the episode along. I don't know, like, maybe he loved his job, but, like, there's no reason. There's no one to insure. They're all gone. Like,
right.
There's no reason to go to work to, that was kind of a, yeah. So, this office scene here, there are some, I guess, cinematography tricks here. What is one of them where he lays his glasses down on the desk and there's a reflection of himself? He's basically, they're trying to illustrate the point of him being there alone with his thoughts, and he has lots of questions for himself, and it's sort of like his alter ego, maybe like, oh, this isn't as great as you thought it was going to be, is it? You're stuck with all of your thoughts, and
I think what his conscience says to him in this part is probably the episode in a whole, because he says to himself, solitude is one thing, but loneliness is another. And I think that was very telling of this episode.
Yeah, that is an important distinction. And yeah, that and the moral at the end that we're going to get to, the line that he quotes at the end, are, the most important things that stick out for sure in the episode. So there, again, and on Jimbo mentioned the graph on the wall behind him. His reflection is in that graph, and he's sort of wrestling with himself in this intermediate scenes. Like, what is he going to do? He starts to question those things, what we just brought up, like, and he even asks himself, oh, boredom is starting to set in, huh? And he's like, no, I'm not bored. And he's having this conversation with himself. And then at the end of these scenes, which were probably really high-tech a long time ago, but they seem kind of corny to us now, but I'm sure that there were a lot of things that were involved in making that happen. I'm going to go ahead and skip a little bit ahead to the scene where he heads home after a long day all by himself and with his thoughts, and he tries to, he tries the earthquake, and he's like, oh, no, I don't want to do that. And then the electrical storm, right? I'm skipping ahead. But now we're heading home, and he's back in the subway station, and he decides to draw a mustache on one of the posters on the subway wall. There's not a whole lot here. And then he ends up back at the apartment, And then he has a couple, again, conversations with himself, if you will, with his conscience. And this scene here in the bathroom where he decides, he comes up with the great idea that, he likes himself, so I'll just create a whole bunch of bees, a whole bunch of clones. This was reminiscent to me of the episode Nervous Man in a $4 Room. I think a lot of the things that they used in that episode, they reused. I think I might even have a trivia point here on, again, basically, if I'm remembering correctly, they film both, actions and reactions, and then they basically put it up on a silver screen, and you're reacting to another actor who is playing all of the facial expressions and emotions, but you do a separate recording. I can't remember exactly how it was done, but again, a lot of those things, I'd have to go back and revisit Nervous Man in a $4 Room because it was a little more on the technical side on how they did that.
There's no way I'm going back to revisit that one.
Right. But anyway, a camera trick on how they did that. There was, I do know that there was actually another person standing across from you who was pretending to be you in the mirror, and you're playing off of their emotional reactions and stuff. So Beechcroft decides that a world of people that he likes would solve the problem, a world basically of a bunch of hymns. And so that's where the episode goes from there.
Hymns and hers.
Yeah. So we come to the next day. We're back to going to the office. And, Beechcroft is standing again at the top of that stairway. And he concentrates and he creates a world of hymns. And Jimbo, you had a lot of commentary. You wanted to say something about the masks that they used.
Yeah, well, so he gets on the subway and you can tell he looks and everybody is his face. He goes into his office building and he always gets a paper and pays the guy, and he turns around and it's him looking back at him, but he's dressed like the newspaper salesman. He goes to get in the elevator. And this is the part that kills me, because if you watch in the background, the used mask, they had masks created of his face, and they are so poorly done, dude. It looks like a wax, I don't know. It's just really terrible. But he ends up stepping on a foot of a lady in there, and she turns around, and it's him in drag. And it's pretty funny to see that.
Yeah.
And he goes upstairs, and I thought this was really well done. When he gets up to his office, it goes to one desk, and it shows him in a different outfit, and he's saying something. And then it fades over to another desk. It's him dressed something else. And he keeps going. And I thought that was really well done to see the clothing difference and all that. And even one of them, I think he has like a mustache and glasses. I think that was really well done. So, but those masks are something that are really bad. And that takes a lot of points away.
Yeah. So, really, this is where the episode really comes to a conclusion. Again, there are a lot of good shots of when he's actually dressed up in different costumes. I like that a lot better as well, rather than the masks. But really, after this new revelation, he finally comes to the conclusion that a lot of me is just as bad as a lot of them. And I thought that was a really good moral of the story. Like, whenever you think that you're, don't think that you're better than someone else. You think people are selfish. We're all selfish, right? And we think that everybody should be like us, and that's just not the case. And I thought that was a really good moral. If the world was filled with everybody like you, it would be at best a boring place, and at worst it would be a horrible place, because we all have failures, we all have shortcomings, and we need people. We are a people. I guess that's not a great way to say it, but we need people in our lives. We need different people. We need human interaction with different people, with different personalities, with people who have strengths where we have weaknesses. So I thought that moral was great, and on that, I did like the episode. But then, of course, Henry spills the coffee one last time on him at the very end of the episode, and we fade out. But just by way of trivia, I'm not gonna touch on very many trivia points, but I will touch on a couple that I think are somewhat important. So the telecast on the evening of November 28th, 1955, Studio One offered The Man Who Caught the Ball at Coogan's Bluff. Serling's script dramatized the story of George Abernathy, a 50-year-old man who works a standard government job. He is a creature of habit. He's totally passive, selfless, and dull. Even his wife controls his finances, and one day, in mid-August, the pattern of the habit of George established is altered. The office is closed for renovation, so he decides to take in a ball game at the Polo Grounds. A pitched ball makes its way into the crowd, and by some fantastic miracle, George stretches out his arm to protect himself and catches the ball. The crowd goes wild with back slaps and congratulations, and the TV announcer interviews him. This was an act of destiny, a new purpose in his living. So George returns home and suggests to his wife that they dine out and they go dancing. His clothes go from Undertaker gray to flamboyant checks. His speech is peppery and colloquial. He may have kicked the heck out of the habit, but his wife Alice cannot philosophically take the change. They have a scene, and George leaves the house only to realize the truth. He's been kidding himself. He's been making believe, and when he returns home, he chooses to remain quiet and uncomplaining. And then the next morning, the little man goes to work as if nothing ever happened, content with the realization that while the world speeds past him, he will remain content if he goes about the world in his own fashion. So once again, Serling took a previous story premise from 1955 from an earlier drama and fashioned an on-air fantasy in the mix. Instead of a baseball game and a fantastic catch in the stand, the main protagonist changes the world using mind over matter. But, like George Abernathy, it doesn't take long for him to realize that the old way was much better and sets out to correct the change. So you can see how those stories are sort of woven together. The main story was woven together with the supernatural or the Twilight Zone-ish effects that Rod put in. So, Jimbo, do you have any? I just got basically, it's just stuff about the cost of the sets. It's not really anything really too interesting as far as trivia goes. Anything that you have, go right ahead.
No, I really couldn't find much in here. The only thing I really found was that mask, but I think it was Director Buzz Kulchik said or whatever that, this is back in the day where you didn't have 3 or 4 weeks to go back and redo something and make sure it's done right. He's like, we had to go with what we had, and that's why the masks look the way they do.
Yeah. One other one, because I mentioned this earlier. So Jack Greenidge, who played the role of Henry, he played that role for $600 contract. That was in March 28th of 1961. This is in regarding to the trivia about the mirrors. It was an interesting shot for me, recalled Greenidge. I not only played the role of Henry, but I was also booked to play the scenes with Shelley when he was talking to himself. I made it possible for Mr. Berman to react with someone. I would be off camera playing his alter ego, then they would do the reverse on him, and I would play the other ego. I also remember talking to him about his prior experience of having the masks made, putting some gooey substance on his face to make the mold. And Buzz Kulick was great to work with, he says, and I was doing a review called The Billy Barnes People at the time and had to make the 8 o'clock curtain. I made each curtain just in time after each day's shoot. It was a fun job. So apparently Mr. Jack Greenidge, I guess he was shooting the Twilight Zone during the day, but then he was in a play at night, and so they accommodated him for that. I thought that was interesting how he was playing off the alter ego in the mirrors scenes. Other than that, I got a couple of goofs. Well, this isn't okay. One of the goofs is when the elevator doors open in the lobby of the insurance company. There is no edging or gap space between the floor and the elevator. Somebody's looking really closely at the episode, apparently, on this goof. So that, because there's no gap or space, it's revealing that both the elevator and the lobby are freestanding sets built on the same floor. So, just a little, I guess people will be really picky about that goof. I mean, obviously, they're not going to use a real elevator. Maybe they do in some, TV shows, but, right, they built a set. They put an elevator door. It's all on one floor. And there was one perspective goof, but I thought this as well. Like, in the beginning, I'm like, well, how does he operate the subway? You know, I had to go back and rewatch it. I was like, well, I thought his powers were just limited to eliminating people. But obviously, as we've watched, he can do a lot more things than just eliminate people. This power of the mind and this power of concentration allows him to do several different things, of which we've already listed in the episode. But questions, observations, Jimbo, go ahead, and then let's talk about that.
So here we go. My thing is, he gave up too easily. You wanted solitary, you wanted silence, and the first thing you do is you go to work. Okay, so don't go to work. Go do something else. Go fly an airplane. There was one telling scene for me too, is when he gets up. If you notice, when he walks into work, there is a car or taxi on the street. But then when he goes upstairs and looks out the window, all the people are gone, but so are all the vehicles. I think that's just a still footage of something, where there was probably cars and stuff there that, so I don't know what happened there. I think if I was him, I would have, you could have went and got all the money from the banks and everything and then made the people come back. So now you're rich, so you don't have to be in that position to begin with. You won't have to work. You could buy a house. You could do anything you wanted. But I also don't understand why he didn't bring. Does he not have any family at all? Does he not have a brother or sister or nieces or nephews or mom or dad or any of that? You don't hear any of that. So maybe he doesn't have anybody. But if you can have powers to make an earthquake, if you can have powers to run subways, if you can have powers to do all this other stuff, then surely you could have the power to create somebody specifically for you that knows all your quirks and loves you anyway.
Okay.
To me, this episode, terrible. I don't want to say terrible, but I'm just saying it's, once again, we see the Twilight Zone trying to pull off a comedy, and they just don't hit the mark when they do comedies. The one that I did like was Mr. Dingle the Strong, because you knew what you were going in for that one, because it was just so over the top, it was hilarious. And that was probably Burgess Meredith's performance, but this one, I'd probably give it a 4 out of 10. It's not very good. And the only reason I'm giving it that high is because I did like some of the cinematography tricks they did with the glasses, the acting in the mirror scene, because it had one of them things where you look in the mirror and you can see there's mirrors on both sides because it goes back and forth further and further away down. So I like what they did there. And Beechcroft's performance was okay. It was a little over the top at times, but talking to himself and all that, but it was all right. So 4 out of 10 for me there, brother.
Yeah, I agree with not being very good overall. Again, I will just go back to the conclusion that a lot of me is just as bad as a lot of them. That's its saving grace. I think the moral of the story, for me, is its saving grace. We already talked about why is he still going to work. We brought that up earlier. Like, that was one thing that stuck out to me. Like, why are you still going through all the motions of working if there's no one to work for? Right. But it also, it sent my mind, as I was thinking about the episode, what if you were the last man or the only man on Earth? It brings up all those questions again. We get a different take in this episode, I guess, versus the very first Twilight Zone episode, Where Is Everybody? Because the main character in this episode is the actual cause of people's disappearance, whereas I think his name was Mike Ferris. In the first episode, he was bewildered, right? He was wondering, it wasn't that he wanted to get rid of everybody. He just woke up one day to this world that was manufactured. Obviously, we find out that's the big, spoiler alert, that has manufactured this world that he's the only one in it. So there is differences between this episode and that episode, but, the whole... Did you ever read Robinson Crusoe when we were back in school? Do you remember that story about... Or if you've seen Castaway...
The Cliff Notes version.
Okay. So, that's where my thoughts went. Like, what if you were the last man on Earth? All of those things, like, what would that be like? What would your world look like? So, it's cool to sort of go down that road mentally. But I don't think the consequences weren't very stern for him. Like, right. Okay, I just made all these people disappear and I didn't like it, so I'll just bring them all back. Like, there should have been some sort of consequence for an earth-shattering decision like that. He's essentially playing God by concentrating, and then, like, he's just like, I don't like this either. I just realized it's, the lesser of two evils is to have everybody come back. And he didn't, a lot of times the Twilight Zone will punish people for their bad actions. I just felt like there should have been, in other episodes, I just felt like there should have been maybe more stiffer consequences for doing something like that rather than just like, I'll just put it back the way it was just because. But, I'm with you. I might give it a 5.5 or 6. I think IMDb gave it a 6.5. But just for the moral itself, it is in there. And this for the idea that it gets you thinking about last man on Earth type scenarios. For that, I'll give it a few points. So it comes in probably, is it a good episode? Not really. Probably a 5.5 for me. So there we go. Wrap this bad boy up.
There you have it. So if you want to follow us on the social medias, we are the Tragedy Cinema Podcast. If you want to email us, you can send it to thetragedycinema@gmail.com. If you want to leave us a review on Apple, iTunes, wherever we find it, we'll get the email and we'll read it on the air. So with that being said, until next time where we have a banger of an episode with Will the Real Martian Please Stand Up, which is heads and shoulders above this one, and maybe a tentacle or two. I think this episode's coming to a close, and that's a wrap.
And cut.
Mr. Archibald Beechcroft, a child of the 20th century, who has found out through trial and error, and mostly error, that with all its faults, it may well be that this is the best of all possible worlds. People notwithstanding, it has much to offer. Tonight's case in point, in the Twilight Zone.